but it was the image quality that blew me away. But I'm quite shocked. I thought it would at least be double that, triple that, like you see in other camera systems out there. Big thanks to Sony Singapore for sending me the camera and a few lenses for review. With that said, these are my thoughts and my thoughts only, but this video is sponsored by Clean My Mac X. More about them in just a bit. So when the Sony A7CR was launched, a number of months back, 6-8 months ago, I'm late to the party, guys, I know. I really just like this form factor because it's easy to take around with you. It's a great street photographer's camera. It's a great daily camera. It doesn't take a lot of space in your bag, but you're still getting really good image quality and great performance. And a friend of mine, Clarence, was raving about this camera. He has both of these cameras as well. And he's saying, you know what? I take out the A7CR predominantly most of the time because of just how easy it is to bring out. And the performance is there. So I wanted to get my hands on it. Plus it comes with the grip at the bottom of this, which I wanted to, try out because I have larger hands and I wanted something a little bit more, I guess you could say girth. Is that a word I should use for cameras? Girth for, for this size of camera. And I don't want to go through all the specs because pretty much it is an A7R5 in a more compact body. Of course, the EVF is smaller, less resolution. We'll talk all about that in a second, but the performance is there. And what it reminded me is just how much I enjoyed using this camera day to day in terms of the autofocusing, the colors. We'll talk about that as well because there are some settings you can put into your Sony cameras. If you don't know this, that can dramatically improve the colors coming out of this camera, which I always kind of knew about, but never really discovered until a recent video. Anyway, more about that in a second. But just the overall usability of this camera was fantastic. And the additional grip at the bottom of this made it a lot easier, especially for people like me who have larger hands, to use this camera daily. Now, it does only do 4K video only, unlike the A7R5, which does 8K video. This does 4K only. So again, for what I'm using here on the YouTube channel, this is more than adequate. Daily video, more than adequate. Some people say,
well, this line skipping, it's not a true blah, 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 blah.
Look, you won't know watching videos on YouTube if this does line skipping or not. You're really not going to know. All these people that are criticizing all this stuff, to be frank with you, if you're doing a feature film, sure. If you're doing something that's going to be broadcast, maybe on Netflix or TV, maybe so. But if we're watching content on our phones and on YouTube, it's more than adequate. It's more than fine. It can do 4K, 60p internally on this, 4.22, 10-bit. It's all inside there. There's no issues at all with that. But this is predominantly a photographer's camera. Now, of course, there are going to be some limitations. As we know, one single UHS 2 card slot on this. There's no CF Express Type A. It is what it is. You have a micro HDMI port on this, which again, wish it was full size, but for the size of the camera, you're probably not going to record with HDMI anyway. So yes, if you want to put a monitor on top of this, you can, but I honestly, you got the flip out rotatable display. Why would you need to do that? I mean, again, this is a photographer's camera first and foremost, which some may say, why does it have a flip out rotatable display? Why not just having a display like the A7R5 that has a full articulation? That would have been great. I think for cost reduction, because they're using the same body as the A7C2, that Sony said, look, we're just going to just change the sensor, change a few specs, and we're going to keep it the same, which they did. The EVF is pretty good. It's got a higher refresh rate than the previous A7C. We've seen this in the A7C2 as well, and it was good for daily photography. I didn't have any issues with it. Yes, would I like a higher resolution EVF? Of course, who wouldn't? But I can see my subjects, they're in focus, the autofocusing is on point, all the information I need to see is there, and so it doesn't really bother me. Again, if you're going to compare it side by side to the A7R5, you are going to notice a difference. But when you put this camera aside, and you just shoot with this primarily, you really don't notice much of a difference at all. It's fine, it's great. Well, one thing I really appreciate about this camera was the daily photography aspect of it. It's small and compact, like my friend Clarence said. It's very easy to take out with you, and this grip is really nice. Now, this does come with the A7CR. With the A7C2, you need to purchase this. But there is one caveat about this grip I want to talk about with you real quick here. And that is that when I got this grip, it had a little bit of this give. It's kind of loose here on the right side where the battery is. And I thought there was probably something wrong with it. So I asked the Sony rep this, and he said, no, that's how it's designed. What it is, and I found this out, is that there was a bit of give here. And I don't know why. So I put some gaffer tape. You can see that there, some gaffer tape right there, just to sort of give it a little bit more padding. So when I do close it up against the camera body, there is no sort of looseness to the grip whatsoever. Because previously I was getting a little bit of wiggle with that. And especially if you're going to be using longer lenses or heavier lenses, it gets annoying and it doesn't feel so secure. I always kept tightening this wheel right here to make sure that it was locked because I didn't want anything to fall off or, get damaged. But a little bit of gaffer tape and you're good to go. Hopefully Sony adjusts that. But let me know if you're having the same issue with your grip that I noticed with that, or is that primarily just this version? I don't know. Sometimes we get review units and not everything is 100%. So I always want to put that disclaimer out there. It could just be mine, but if it's yours, let me know in the comments section below. Outside of that though, you're getting phenomenal image quality. And this sensor and what Sony has done with it in terms of the dynamic range is unbelievable. I mean, you can blow out your images, overexpose your images, and pull out so much detail from the highlights and the overexposure. You can bring it all down and retain so much information. It reminds me a lot of medium format cameras. Now, we're not talking phase 1 or, Hasselblad H series, but if you talk about the X2Ds and the GFX 100s, it's getting kind of that dynamic range similar. Not exactly the same, I know that, but it's similar. You notice that. Even more so than other cameras out there that are 45 megapixels, 50 megapixels. They sacrifice a little bit of that dynamic range for speed. You notice here the image quality out of this camera is friggin' awesome. The autofocus, I don't need to talk too much about it. It's the same as the A7R5. That AI chip inside of this, it's all there. You're getting bang on autofocus. It works great for animals, great for people. Sony's autofocus is some of the best in the industry, and it's right here in this camera system. With that said, I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's one thing that really it wasn't a deal breaker, but it did sort of dishearten me a little bit about this camera. And it's very similar to the A7R5, mind you, but I noticed it a little bit more with this because of just the way I was using the camera, is the max shutter speeds, especially an electronic shutter, which is only 8,000. Mechanical shutter is only 4,000. So if you're going to be using, let's say, a 51.2 or 51.4, a faster aperture lens, and you want to shoot out in bright daylight, you're going to need an ND filter or you're going to have to stop down. Now, you can overexpose the image and bring back some of that information because the sensor is that good with the dynamic range. So that can help you, but I'm quite shocked that the electronic shutter is only 8,000 at its max. I thought it would at least be double that, triple that like you see in other camera systems out there. I'm not too sure why Sony did this. Maybe it's to optimize image quality first and foremost, but that was something that I did notice. So if you are a shooter that does have a 51.2, a 51.4, 35.1.4, or any fast aperture lens, you want to get into this camera system and you want to shoot wide open in bright daylight, purchase an ND filter just to be safe on that, unfortunately. That is pretty much it. Outside of that though, this camera has been a joy to use. But when you're talking about larger image files, I mean, these are large images, especially if you shoot uncompressed, they can take up a lot of space in your computer. And that's where Clean My Mac X comes into play. Now, Clean My Mac X has been a software that I've been using for quite a period of time on my Mac. Here I use a Mac Studio to edit primarily on, and my MacBook Pro M3 Max as well. But when you shoot a lot of images like I do for reviews here, I'm storing a lot of them on my Mac. I mean, they can take up a lot of space in no time flat, especially since I'm shooting thousands of images at a time. With Clean My Mac X, it is going to give me a lot of my information of how much storage I have utilized, how much RAM is being utilized based on the program. It will let me know, do you want to quit these programs or not? It is sort of like your assistant to make sure that your computer is fully optimized when you're running it, no matter if it's about storage, about RAM usability, or if there's any malware, any sort of potential threats to your computer. Clean My Mac X will alert you and let you know it. But it's great to clean out your computer once in a while to sort of get rid of all the files that you don't use anymore, especially for reviewers like me who take so many images on higher resolution cameras. They eat up your hard drive very quickly, and Clean My Mac X has been a godsend for me in terms of cleaning up my Mac, knowing where the files are, deleting them without having to spend hours and hours searching for those files. So if you want 10% off on Clean My Mac X, click on the link below. Big thanks to Clean My Mac X for sponsoring this video. Now, a little bit of a tip that I talked about at the beginning of this video, how to maximize the colors out of the Sony cameras. Now, when you want to shoot in the standard, color profile, it looks a little bit flat. Sony's done a great job in sort of neutralizing the colors to make it a lot more easier to edit your images, to make them how you want them to look colors-wise. And that's something that I do applaud Sony with. I've noticed it since the A7R5, the colors have dramatically improved. But there is something to notice in here, which if you have not used yet, I would highly recommend you trying it out. And that is your creative looks. Now, we talked about this in my Sony ZV-E10 Mark II video, where we were talking about the creative looks. So we've seen this in Fujifilm cameras. They have their simulations, and other camera systems out there have this. Sony's had it in there for quite a period of time, but you're probably like me and never used it because you just used it in standard mode and that was it. And obviously they're not really well branded. They're just sort of labeled as ST and PT and NT and VV and VV2 and FL and IN. I mean, there's nothing that's going to like make you remember these things. You know what I'm saying? I've been shooting a lot of images on FL, and I learned this, funny enough, through a reviewer's guide I got for the Sony ZV-E10 II from Sony, which they were saying, hey, look at our color profiles or our creative looks. And I was looking at these images. Wow, that looks a really good tonal quality to the image. So I tried it out. And lo and behold, they look absolutely fantastic and they will really enhance the look of your images. Now, yes, you can do this in Lightroom. You can go into Lightroom, you can adjust these, after the fact, you can choose how you want it to be. But if you want really good black and whites, you've got it inside this camera. You want really good skin tones, you've got it inside this camera. And I'm just kind of letting you guys know, you may already know this. If you do, great. But if you don't, you've never tried this before in your Sony camera, go into your creative looks, try it out. You may be pleasantly surprised. You can adjust some of the settings inside that as well to, further enhance the look. And it's kind of like a film simulation. It goes right into the raw file when you upload it into Lightroom. Of course, you can adjust it from there or just go to Adobe Standard, but it is on the raw file. And I mean, most of these images you're seeing here, all I'm doing is adjusting basically exposure, highlights and shadows, a little bit of contrast, but the colors are pretty much right out of camera. So to wrap up this video, for the most part, I am a huge fan. And I would say that with a lot of the cameras out there that are shooting 45, 50 megapixels and beyond that, I think Sony's done a great job bringing that technology, that resolution into a form factor like this. It makes it a great street photographer's camera. Now, yes, there is something to be said that with some people say, well, there's not that emotional connection like you get with other camera systems. And yes, I do understand that because Sony cameras are designed to be tools used out there in the field. And they may not have all the, the brass fittings and all that, the beautiful designs that we're going to see on other cameras out there. But if you want performance, you're going to get that with this A7CR. And by the way, you can put this up with smaller lenses out there, the 42.5, the other G lenses out there, and these are going to be great daily kits to walk around with. And I have just really enjoyed using it. Personally, between the silver and the black, I would go for silver because I just think it looks better. But, I got the black for review, so it is what it is. But if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. More content on the way. Thanks again for the support, and I will chat to you very, very soon. Take care.